This is Milan, and I'm back with my week 4 vlog for acting theory in America. This week we examined the great Stella Adler. Our first reading was chapter 6 of Richard Brestoff's book, The Great Acting Teachers and Their Methods, followed by chapter 21 of Method Acting Reconsidered, edited by David Krasner. The piece that we read was called The Stella Adler Conservatory, written by Mark Hammer. Our previous readings discussed her connections to the group theater. However, it was very fascinating this week to finally delve into Stella Adler's specific beliefs and methods and the way that she developed those methods. I really liked that Hammer started his chapter by outlining that Adler was first an actress, then a teacher, and a distant third, she was a theorist. Others we have discussed, such as Klerman, Stanislavski, and Strasberg, were somewhat criticized for not being actors or not being dedicated enough to the craft, focusing more on their own theories about the craft. So from the first few readings as well as this week's readings, I really gathered that there is a value in an actor and actress becoming a teacher, and that experience that they can offer in their teachings. Initially, it was very interesting to find that Stella's parents were also well-known actors within the American Yiddish theater, and that she began acting at age 4. So while she may have had natural talent, having parents that worked in the industry as well as getting into the craft so early was definitely something that benefited her, as well as the dedication that she had. So we do learn that she was an established actress, but she still continued to study places like the American Lab Theater, and then eventually having those lessons and discussions with Stanislavski, which ultimately seemed to be the catalyst that kickstart her teaching career when she comes back to America. I did find Adler's teachings to be quite different from Strasberg, and I personally would not compare them as many do. I do think they get compared due to their relationship and proximity in history, but when you do look at the way that they both teach, there are some very big differences. Brestoff's chapter revisits this elusive topic of emotion. Adler's approach is intriguing to me, as her focus is more on imagination, circumstances, and actions versus the emotion memory and the recall of emotion. We previously learned of Adler's issues with the concept of emotion memory, so it does make sense that her teachings would only call to use that technique as maybe a last resort or in very specific situations. I do see the logic in her belief that physical embodiments of emotions can help actors to present truthful emotions on stage, and she talks about the overall action and also playable actions. I like the use of the term playable action in this chapter, specifically for my high school students. I feel like the language can help when teaching, because playable action calls on actors to dissect emotions into the smallest actions that make them up. And as human beings, it is human nature that we pick up on these idiosyncrasies in our body language and in our facial expressions. So to be doing this explicitly in the name of acting definitely is helpful, and calling them playable actions, again, is a really good term, especially for students. I also found it interesting that Adler took animal exercises and turned them into a way that actors could apply those principles to human actions and emotions. Overall, I did find Adler's approaches to teaching acting to be very practical, and I do think that this was definitely linked to the fact that she was an actress herself, and she developed her teachings not just from theories, but from experience. As an ELA teacher, I also found Adler's approach to analyzing text to be very interesting. This is examined in Mark Hammer's chapter about the Conservatory, where he speaks about how she valued understanding a playwright's intentions. He describes her as somebody who is deeply respectful of a playwright. So she really did believe that understanding the circumstances of the play helped actors to develop the character's background, and thus having all of those actions together creates that truthful experience that the actor can now present on stage. In addition, she had a big focus on imagination and the importance of imagination. And in my written responses, I wrote that imagination is one of the things that makes acting fun and believable. So this was probably one of her principles from the experience. Again, she activated her imagination on stage, and she experienced these big moments during her time as a full-time actress. So this experience was then part of her teaching. The last thing that we learned about this week was the Stella Adler Conservatory and how it serves as a place to memorialize her legacy and continue it. They are still teaching the Adler technique in the first year as a requirement for all students, and then they've branched out to include things such as improv studies. So they are taking all of her practices and really trying to honor her legacy. So it was very interesting to find that these early teachers are still being memorialized and that their teachings are of value. Stella Adler is definitely somebody who I think took a very practical approach to teaching acting. And again, the big thing here is that was rooted in her experiences that informed her teaching.